Hey, it's Aaron. I'm here in Colorado. We got a lot of snow. It's awesome. So what we've been doing is we've been taking cars out in this lot, right? It's full of deep snow. It's an awesome lot. And we've just been seeing what we can do. Crazy people like this guy have been driving out here. We've been spinning around, seeing what happens when you turn things on, when you turn off safety systems, and learning what those things do for you. It's pretty great. Totally worth it. Check it out. That's what's coming up. The Rocky Mountain Redline Ice Drive event happens every year, and I have gone every year that it's happened. How cool is that? So this was year number 3 for me. Every year we get to take vehicles out onto a snow-covered and ice-covered parking lot and sometimes a lake, and we get to see what happens when the safety systems are doing their job or when we're dumb enough to turn them off and see the results. So, this year we had 6 vehicles. Every single one of them qualifies as an everyday regular drive. Not a single one of them was a supercar, megacar, or any sort of exotic anything. They were all regular, everyday, you see them all the time vehicles. That was a good thing. It should also be noted that every one of them was outfitted with snow tires, which are a must when driving in conditions like this. If you don't have at least all-season radials, you have no business being on the road when the roads get terrible. Now, let's talk about the cars that were there. I'm just going to go in alphabetical order by manufacturer and tell you what we did. So the 2020 Acura RDX, this was in its A-Spec package. This was actually the second time I've driven this generation of the RDX at this event. So the RDX is a wonderful car, wonderful crossover. It's well balanced, it's beautifully designed, it's a true sport luxury crossover, and it just does everything really well. I've had it off-road, I've had it twice now in snow and ice, and I've driven it as a daily vehicle for review purposes. At this event, what I learned was it was, out of all the cars, probably the most fun to hoon around in, with one exception. And that exception happened to be a muscle car, so we have to give it an exception. But the RDX really does well. Without safety systems, it flies around, spins in circles, does whatever you want, and it has a good time doing it. With the safety systems on, though, it's very difficult to get this vehicle to do anything stupid. It will stay on the track that you're giving it, it will respond to your steering inputs, and it will go where you want to go without a problem. Next up is the aforementioned muscle car. This is a 2020 Dodge Charger GT with all-wheel drive. Now the GT package is new this year. It is basically derived from the Challenger GT. So it's the same basic setup. It's a 6-cylinder engine with all-wheel drive, but the GT soups it up a little bit, gives it about 300 horsepower or so, and gives it some beautiful sounding pipes. Nice rumble coming out of this car. Now, it is a big 4,000-pound sedan, so the physics are inescapable. It is going to slip and slide. It really does want to go sideways when you tell it to. But with all-wheel drive and safety systems on, it's a pretty stable ride. As long as you're judicious about how you control it, it will do just fine in bad weather. That said, you can push a button, hold it down, and all of that stuff turns off. Now you're rear-wheel drive, you got no traction control, and you can go nuts. That was fun. Next up is the Charger's cousin from Fiat, the Fiat 500X. This is a crossover that is not based on the platform that the other 500 models are. It is actually based on the same platform as the little Jeep Renegade. That really makes a difference. This is a true 4x4 vehicle. Now, it's not off-road ready, you're not going to go rock climbing with it or any of that, but it's a vehicle designed from scratch to have all-wheel drive, and that really shows. So the 500X is exceedingly stable in bad weather. When things go bad, when the roads are slick, and I drove it on the regular roads as well as at this lot in bad weather, when all of those things are not in your favor, the 500X is. It will go where you want, it will do what you want. There are a couple of things to know though. First, it's a turbocharged engine. So there's a little 1.3 turbo. That turbo really kicks in and easily breaks your traction if you're not careful with it. The way to be careful is to either control the gearing, so force it into manual shifting and keep the gears high so its RPMs are low, or feather the throttle to do the same thing. You want to keep the RPMs under about 1500 or so and keep the turbo from engaging. When you do that, that keeps those wheels from breaking traction. The turbo's very aggressive about giving power, so you want to be careful not to get too much too fast. Other than that, the 500X is wonderful when the weather's bad. Next up is Honda's volume seller, the 2020 Honda CR-V. The CR-V is a bestseller for a reason. It is a very well done vehicle. Now, out on the snow and ice, for safety, it does really well. Honda does a couple of things to make that happen. First off, when it notices traction slip, when it notices that there's a problem, it modulates the throttle. It keeps the throttle from letting you get punchy. The second thing it does, and which is even more obvious, is when you crank the wheel all the way to the left or to the right so that it's locked in a full turn, and the vehicle does not turn in that direction with that, so in other words, you're sliding, it kills throttle. So you have no power going to the wheels anymore, which stops the vehicle. If you're sliding off the road and you're trying desperately to get back on the road and you crank that wheel to make it happen and you keep sliding off the road, you want that vehicle to stop. That is the safest action at that point. So wonderful system, very well done. The same thing, by the way, that throttle killing also happens in the Acura RDX. Next up is the Nissan Altima with all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is new to the Altima as of last year. It's one of two of Nissan's vehicles that have all-wheel drive now as sedans. This is a big upgrade for this car. As far as safety goes, it did wonderfully. It's very difficult to get this car to slide or slip or do anything that is unsafe. That meant that it was no fun out there. It also meant it was very, very safe. There are two reasons for that. One, the engine is perfectly matched to the car. It doesn't give very much power, so it's not very fast. At the same time, it has a CVT, a continuously variable transmission. That CVT means no fun whatsoever. It keeps the RPM at an even rate all the time as much as possible. All of that comes together to mean that the Altima will not get in a big hurry, which means it can't slip the tires. It doesn't break traction, it doesn't slide around, it does wonderful as far as safety goes. Next up is the Nissan Rogue Sport. So this is the smallest Rogue. It is not actually related to the regular Rogue except by its name. The Rogue Sport is based on the European Qashqai, which is a compact crossover SUV. This is the last one on our list, but it is not the least. It has all the advantages the Altima does in terms of safety. Really can't get in a big hurry. But it was more fun to drive because it has the dynamics of a car in terms of feel, but it drives with the slightly higher stance and bigger presence of a crossover, which means it was a little more intuitive in terms of getting it to slip and slide when I wanted to. All of that said, even with traction control off, it was not a hoon machine. You could not get this thing to really fly around. It just isn't made for that. Which means, again, it was very, very safe. So, out of all the vehicles that we had, all 6, none of them were really comparable. They weren't really competitive with one another. But I will say that out of all of these cars, there isn't a single one I would not choose as a safety in bad weather vehicle. Every one of them was very, very good in bad weather. So that was it. That was a great event. I want to thank Rocky Mountain Redline for that. I also want to thank Nathan Leach Proffer of Speed Photos for the photography and video that he did while we were there. And I want to thank all the other journalists that were there. We had a good time. It was a great pack of people. It really, really went well. So there you go. That's what I got. All right.